written articles or are videos the way to go?
Some people believe that written content is dying. If I have a company who their website copy sucks, that person's going to need a content manager before they need a videographer.
How does that play into the way that people consume content?
I think the biggest mistake kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning, is thinking that content and video is just a production-focused role. It's not good enough.
Boom, mic drop.
What has to be true is that, yes, we have to be production-focused, but we also need to be strategic.
Welcome back to Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter, and today we are joined by Lindsey Auten. She's a trainer here at Impact. Lindsey, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. How's everything going? How's life?
Life is good. Life is good. I'm not like the rest of, I don't know how many of our listeners or viewers live in the southern part of the United States, but here in Florida, it's starting to feel like fall, and that's great. So no more high heat and humidity.
Very
nice.
nice.
Some nice, warm fall weather.
Excellent. Yeah, it's full effect up here for fall. We have like a million leaves in my backyard that I have to start figuring out where they're going to go and leaf blowing. But love this time of year. Good time of year. All right. Well, it's great to see you. We have a really interesting topic today. This is something that I love because I'm a videographer at my core, and I know you are too. We're both on the entertainment side of this equation. So the big question, the big topic, are written articles or are videos the way to go? It's like the verses. Articles are more important, videos are more important. Which one should people be thinking about? Which one should people be prioritizing? I know this is kind of a loaded topic, but I want to break it down. I want to get into it with you. So let's start high level and just talk about articles versus video.
Yeah. I hate the idea of one type of content being pitted against another type of content, because the reality is like you need both of them.
Okay.
Like there's you still need written content, you still need video content. It's just a matter of presenting the content in maybe a different way. And I know that some people would say, or some people believe, or for whatever reason have intrinsically solidified in their brains and their bodies that written content is dying. It's like, maybe the way we've thought about it is changing, but I would be hard pressed to say written content is actually dying out. It's just evolving. And if we don't understand how and why it's evolving, then that's where we're going to miss out on the value of any medium of content. So I hate pitting them against each other, saying what's more important. It's like they're both important.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, you just have to decide, you just have to be on top of why something is changing, how it's changing, and how are you going to respond to those changes, whether it's written or video.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You said something too, it's an evolution, and I really like that because I've been hearing all too often, especially lately with AI and with everything happening in the marketplace, that written and blogging is dying and it's not what it used to be and it's shifting and there's all this stuff happening. And I think that's part of why this topic came up, was if articles are dying, do we need to focus on video? Is that the priority? And it sounds like what you're saying is they're both important, but for different reasons. And you should still be doing both. Am I saying that correctly?
You should still be doing both. Yes.
Okay. So what does that look like? You're a content manager, you're a videographer. What does that look like, the mix of article to video and the ratio? And I know we're supposed to be posting 2 to 3 a week. That's pretty standard. But what does that balance look like?
Yeah, this drives me nuts about the content and videographer role. People are so focused on what's the output? 2 to 3 a week, 2 to 3 a week. The output's important. But what's almost more important is the results of that output. So if your marketing team has a goal of generating, let's say that the goal for each month of a quarter is to generate 50 new marketing qualified leads. I'm just making up a number.
Sure.
How do they get to that number? Up to them. Creative strategies to think of, all right, we know we can do the production cadence, but maybe we need to hit one harder because we know, all right now, this is driving more of that marketing qualified lead that we're looking for. Or maybe we need to find a new way to deliver that content in a way that's not written or video. And so I think one of the misconceptions that we have on the role, or that we place on the content videographer roles, is that these are just production outlets. Their sole focus is just to produce, produce, produce. And that's missing the mark. It's not good enough. What has to be true is that, yes, we have to be production focused, but we also need to be strategic. So if a content manager comes to me and says, hey, I noticed I'm writing 3 articles a week and I see some of my articles starting to take off, but they're not take off, meaning they're starting to drive traffic, but we're not getting any, clicks
or like
from
conversions.
them.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversions, like conversion optimization. Then I'm going to tell that content manager, all right, well, for the next month or so, instead of publishing 3 brand new articles each week, you're going to publish 2 new articles and optimize 2 articles, or optimize 3 articles and publish 1 new article. It just depends. Yes, we need to know that you can do it. Yes, we need to know that you as a content creator can hit this output. And that's why it's so important to stress that in the beginning. But as you develop into the role, you should be able to understand the nuances of the strategy and what you need and what the output is that's going to get you to that mark. So maybe it's more like, all right, we need to focus on producing more video because we see our organic social traffic driving more traffic to the website that's coming from YouTube. Let's focus on optimizing those to see if we can create any new contacts in our system. And when I say contacts, I'm referring to HubSpot specifically.
Okay.
There's too much of a focus on, we need to do as much content as humanly possible, and not enough focus on what's our goal, what's the content output that's going to help us achieve that goal.
Yeah, the strategy is critical, and it's apparent when you say it that way. It's clicking. I totally get what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense, and I think the results are also important. So if your audience likes to read more than like to watch videos, then you need to adjust your strategy accordingly, and vice versa. If they consume their content through video, obviously you know what you got to shift into. How does that play into the overarching strategy of picking topics? So what topic should we pick, and just what that mix looks like as far as when we talk about planning it out?
Yeah. So let's say it's topics are still goal focused. Let's say you've set a goal for the quarter of generating more bottom of the funnel conversions, giving your sales team more at bats, if you will. So they move from marketing qualified to sales qualified, and then they become a person who's educated enough to speak to your sales team. You're already bringing in a bunch of leads. They just need to be nurtured and get to that point.
Right.
Well, then your content strategy should be focused around bottom of the funnel topics. And those bottom of the funnel topics, whether or not there's a strong visual component, let's say you're a contractor, and one of the challenges or barriers that you have when you go to someone's house for the first time is that people think you're a stranger. Well, then maybe most of that bottom of the funnel content needs to be video, because if someone doesn't think you're a stranger because they've seen you in a video, right? When you walk up to their doorbell and they're looking in their little Ring cameras and they're like, oh, it's Johnny at the door. I know Johnny from the video. They're going to feel better about letting you in, and then you're going to have a conversation that's 10 times better because they already know who you are because they've seen you and you're not a stranger to them.
Right. You're not
so in
rando.
That instance, in that instance, you are going to maybe you're going to focus more on video than you would articles for bottom of the funnel. Maybe your sales team needs specific documentation breaking down elements of a proposal. Maybe that's an article because you could screenshot different elements of a proposal and analyze them in an article form. So it really depends on what's needed, what's the best medium to tackle that need, and how are we measuring the success of that hypothesis.
Got it. No, that makes sense too. So you said something in there, and it just brings me back to what we always talk about, which is trust and building trust with people. And for companies that are trying to decide whether to start or lean into more of the written or the video piece, what would you recommend if they are trying to build trust and maybe they don't really have content, they're just starting their content journey? Is video the more likely option just to build the trust and start it getting getting that comfortability and letting people know who your SMEs are and your team are, or is written, I guess maybe it's industry specific too, but I'm just curious as to like how that plays into it.
Yeah, it's company specific.
Okay.
It's what's the need right now, what's the best way to tackle that need, and what's the outcome we're trying to achieve with that. So if I have a company who, like, let's say they know they need to revamp their website copy. Their website copy sucks. Like let's just say it's not good. And then they don't drive a lot of traffic. That person's going to need a content manager before they need a videographer.
Yeah.
Because they're going to need someone who can write copy well, to update that copy on their website, to start filling out their learning center, to build up that repository, that information that they need. But let's say I have a company that comes in, their website's all right. Like it's got okay copy. It's got a lot of traffic, but they're struggling with conversions, and they're a very visual product. Well, then I'm going to recommend hiring a videographer first. So it really depends on each company, what the need is, and what the outcome we're looking to get in that first 90 days of taking on an endless customer journey is.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So for me, I'm just digesting what you said about the website, because I think that's a really important piece, that ultimately the content that we're creating drives people to your website, because that's typically the conversion point. Not always, but typically is the conversion point. So if that's not optimized and the copy isn't updated and that isn't positioned in a way that's going to continue to build trust and help people convert, then it doesn't matter what content you make, right? It's just going to end up driving people to a place that doesn't do exactly that.
Correct. It's like when I used to coach fitness back in the day, and someone would come into the gym brand new and have a terrible body weight squat. Like, can't get their hips below their knees, they're coming up on their toes, their chest is pitching forward, terrible form. I am not going to give that person a barbell. That person is going to work on that squat technique until me as your coach says, all right, you fixed all these things. Let's start to add all the bells and whistles. Like, that person should not, that person has too much to focus on from the foundational standpoint that would crack and get injured if they put something like a barbell on their back or on their front or even over their head.
Totally.
Needs to be a solid foundation. In this instance, it's the website that is the anchor point for everything. And if that's not solid, then any content effort you put in probably isn't going to work as well as it could.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You got to make sure that the form is right. You can have the proper foundation before you can build a house. I get what you're saying. So how does that play into the way that people consume content? We talked about this a little earlier, that ultimately you need to create content that resonates with your audiences. How do you do that? How do you start to see and track and understand what your audience wants so that you can give them more of what they want and not just make content that you think that they want, which may or may not hit the mark?
Yeah. I think one of the strongest ways that we can still do this is understand the intent of why someone is searching for something. So what I mean by intent is if you go to Google and you type something in, let's say you're typing in cost of X product, and then you get a bunch of content in that search that is not exactly addressing what you're looking for. You're going to look for something else. You're not even going to click on any of those pieces because none of the titles stand out to you as it's directly addressing what I'm looking for. Right.
And that's where the frustration starts to set in too. And I'm like, why can't I just find the thing that I need so I can move on with my life? And I think that a lot of people can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's understanding the problem really well and articulating that and articulating it in a way that people are actually looking for it, and then giving them exactly what they need. Being very direct. I see this a lot with content and video both, is we're too afraid to go direct. And that's what people want. That's what they're looking for, is the direct answer. We have short attention spans. We want it fast. If we don't get it, we're going to leave.
Right. So true. How does that play into written content? How can you measure, because I feel like it's a little bit more difficult than video, but there's still, if you're using a CRM like HubSpot, there are still ways to track or like use heat maps or whatever the case may be to see how much time people are spending on to page or how they're interacting with your written content. So I get the video piece. How does that play into the written side of things?
Well, I think what you need to consider in the written side of things is the element of the AI overview, the elements of things that will come up before those traditional organic search results things come up. And one of the biggest things that you can do to help yourself in that area is, again, be direct as possible. So let's say we're going to continue on cost and I'm writing an article. What should a new pool cost me? Or what should a new pool cost in 2025? You're heading into 2025, and content managers, if you're not already using the date 2025 in your articles, you better start soon and better be optimizing all of your old content to say 2025 instead of 2024 and make sure you're updating information. But back to the topic. If someone submits an article to me and it's a cost article and there is no direct answer right in the introduction, that's a problem. Like in that introduction, you have your question, preview, promise, and then you should be able to say this will cost and give the range. Bold that range. That's one of those signals that says we're directly answering the question. And if you click into that and your eyes go right to that bold, well, then you've already, as a content manager, you have won because you have been able to get them to load that page, directly answer their question, and hopefully they stay. But if they didn't, you've sent a really strong signal that this is a direct answer to the person reading it, and then to something like an AI to pick up on, all right, here's a cue for you to look at to say, this content is directly answering this question in the way that someone wants to answer it.
Yeah.
So being more direct earlier on in your articles than maybe you typically would 3 or 4 years ago is going to be a huge help in the success of your written content.
Yeah, and I can already hear people saying like, but won't that turn some of our customers away or potential customers away? And we talk about this all the time. Disqualifying people is just as good as qualifying people, because a lot of those people that end up disqualifying, if you don't set them up to directly address those problems, see the price so that they can make that decision, how much time and effort is that going to take to ultimately get to the same place and waste your sales team's time and all the time in your CRM and just trying to figure out and sort your way through that journey. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
And they might not even be serious about buying at that point. Maybe they just looked out in their backyard and they pulled up their phone and said into a voice search, hey, Google, what should a new pool cost me?
Right.
And they pulled that up.
Yeah, no, and this is a perfect segue. So I wanted to ask you about SEO, because you had mentioned Gemini earlier, and AI especially, everyone's seeing it. When you search Google, the first thing that pops up now is that AI response, and it scrubs the internet for the best answer. How does this conversation play into SEO? And when we're talking about articles versus video and the strategies for each, like how does SEO play into this equation?
Yeah, SEO is evolving, obviously.
That's a nice way of putting it.
It's definitely something that honestly we don't have all the answers to right now.
Yeah.
So a strategy or a thing that I teach someone today could be different next week.
Mm-hmm. It's moving real fast. That's why I made the joke of like, oh, it's evolving. It's kind of like a train that's like going off the rails. It's going so fast,
Yeah. And there's still value in the strategy of right to appear on the first page, but more and more we're leaning in. Especially with the people I talk to, we're leaning into how are you distributing that information, and how are you distributing it in a way where it can be found in multiple places. So
Gotcha.
Videos on YouTube are a great way to distribute that information. Most people in a day, maybe more than once in a day, are going to go to YouTube at some point to look up something and watch a video on it. That being said, I don't necessarily think that for all businesses, growing a brand new YouTube channel from scratch is going to get you results right away. Because a baby YouTube channel with how many billions of users are on YouTube it's going to take time to grow. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, if you start a YouTube channel today, it's going to take off. No, it's not. That's silly to even say. So we have to be willing to let it grow, let it mature, but also realize there might be other places where video makes more sense or posting written content makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm a B2B business and let's say my target audience is some leadership roles within a business.
Okay.
Well, then maybe I want to be repurposing my content on LinkedIn. Like maybe I want to be posting videos on LinkedIn. Maybe instead of just posting articles, I'm also posting those articles as a newsletter on LinkedIn from my company.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm also creating posts for my subject matter experts based on that article to share on their own LinkedIns so that we start building a foundation there.
Yeah.
If I'm a home services business, people still get recommendations off of Facebook of
Mm-hmm.
all places for home services. Like they go to Facebook groups, they ask the group, who do you recommend for this? I did this the other day. I went to my gym Facebook group, asked if anyone could recommend a tiki carving artist, which is fun. And of course, people posted and tagged businesses in that post. So I went to those tiki carving artists' Facebook pages to see, like, all right, could I learn anything from these pages?
Yeah.
So I think that we have to understand, like, yes, SEO is evolving and there's still value in ranking high on Google, but there has to be other ways that we distribute content because, and I think Marcus has said this a million times already, you can't just build your house on Google. You have to,
Yep. You gotta
add
switch it up.
other floors, other rooms. You have to do other things to get found today.
Yeah, no, and it plays into the piece about intent, where you need to try to understand. I love what you're saying, because you need to try to understand who your buyers are and what their intention is, and try to get into the psychology, the mindset of that. And then how does that play into exactly what you're saying? Like, should we post on LinkedIn? Should we repurpose this content? How do you like let the intent piece help your decision making when it comes to strategy?
Yeah, I think where that comes in is you just have to really understand who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Like you have to know your customer inside and out, what their problems are, what their fears are, what their concerns are, what they're excited about, and where do they spend their time? What platforms does that person frequent? When do they frequent it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, you know that information, then you know where you have to post and when you have to post it.
Right. So do your research, do your homework, folks, because it is important. Yep. Yeah. So I have a question. Mm-hmm. Is there a world where there's like a hybrid version of this? Like, can I write a blog article that has a video embedded in it? ? Or are there ways to combine the content? And if so, does that like amplify it? Does it make it better? Or like, what does that mix look like?
Yeah, I think there is it's super valuable to have written and video together. Mm-hmm. If I'm a content manager and I'm writing Big Five content, then I want my videographer to be producing similar content that I can embed from our YouTube channel.
Right.
So they do work together. They work really well together, and they make just a better user experience, because if I don't want to read the whole blog, but the video's on that page, there's still value in that for whichever way you want to learn.
Yeah. No, the way that you just said that too, it makes me think like it's covering the bases, in the sense that like some people might like to read. That's the way they consume content. Some people might like to watch video. Hi, me. And that way you're not missing anybody. It gives the opportunity for everybody to be able to digest the content the way that they want to.
Yeah.
What about repurposing? So like, can you take video content and turn it into written content, or vice versa? And what does that look like? How does that play into the strategy in the mix?
You totally can, you totally should, but you also need to keep in mind the nuances of what makes a video good does not make an article good. So you just have to be aware of the best practices for each thing. Mm-hmm. And let that content be shaped by those best practices. So for example, if I'm turning an article into a video, well, then your script for that video or outline for that video is not just read the article verbatim. That's not how it works. You have to understand that if I'm making a video, the value of using a human in that video is they're going to talk the way they talk. So they need to be given like a script in the way that they speak. Yes. So you need to change your article to be structured in the way that person actually speaks. so that that person can read it, it sounds natural, or give that person bullet points and let them kind of not ramble, because for a videographer that's like ramble. That's
But put their own style on it. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Put their own spin on it, the way that they speak, the things that they say that make them different from other people, kind of thing. So
Right.
that will make it easier. What I love that I see more and more small businesses doing, which I think is really smart, is their content creator, and I say creator deliberately, will take an interview or a topic that they're doing for a blog and record it similar to how we're recording this, and use it as video podcast, shorts, and then use the information from that interview to create the article. So that person is being very smart and efficient in the way that they're making deliberate decisions to make a bunch of different content for, out of just one session with a subject matter expert.
Yeah. That's actually exactly what we do here on the Endless Customers channel. So I feel pretty good about myself.
Way to be efficient.
Hey, Austin, you hear that? Yeah, this is great. No, I'm all about maximizing your time, because we only have so much time. So to be able to repurpose content and have all these different lines that you can pull off of one podcast or one video or whatever the case is, it's great. It's like the best way to squeeze the most juice out of the lemon, right?
Yeah, and you can lean into AI to help you. Like if you're a really strong videographer, but you also need to write articles, and you're not as strong, maybe you create yourself a custom GPT that you feed information to on how to write articles, best practice, what words not to use, what words to use, the information about your business that it needs to know, and then you feed it a transcript, ask it to create an article from the transcript, and you're not writing from scratch. 80% of the work gets done for you. You just have to add that human element to the article before it gets published.
Right.
Then you've saved yourself time.
It's an amazing thing. That's exactly what we do here as well. And the fascinating piece for me is we use GPT. Every time you upload a new script or a transcript from the podcast or whatever piece of content you're using, it learns. So like it gets more and more like your voice and in your style, and it adapts to exactly how you talk. And yes, you still need to look at it after it's done and go through it and make sure that it's correct and customize it so that you're not just copying and pasting out of GPT, but it can help you tremendously. So yeah. You train a lot of companies on how to do this. You have a ton of experience helping people with exactly what we're talking about. Can we talk about some mistakes or some common mistakes that you've seen happen and what people should be thinking about to maybe try to get ahead of those situations?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning, is thinking that content and video is just a production focused role. Yes, they have cadences that they need to hit, but they are also a strategy role, and they should be treated as a strategy role, and they should be able to say to a manager or boss, like, hey, if we have a goal to hit, if we have to hit X goal, we think this is the way to do it, so we're going to adjust our production cadence accordingly. If they're strong strategists and you feel comfortable as a leader in the direction of their strategy, let them run with it. If they make a mistake, they should be able to tell you, hey, we made this miscalculation. Here's what went wrong. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. Mm-hmm. That should be exciting to you. Like, you should be excited to have people who are that self-sufficient, who are that intelligent, who are that willing to go out and say, like, I think this is going to work. I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't, here's my backup plan.
Yeah.
That's the type of person you want on a team.
I agree.
Someone who's not afraid to take a risk, someone who feels comfortable with experimenting, and someone who is like, yes, they're going to put their head down and do the work, but who's going to be able to look at it from a top-down perspective and say, like, I know where I effed up. Here's what I'm going to do differently, or I know where we did really well, and I'm going to accelerate that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're reminding me of Mary Brown on our web team, because she says the same thing. It's like calculated guessing. So you're making the best guess that you can, but then you also have to have the willingness to just put it out there, and then from the data see what's working and not, and be willing to say, hey, this worked, or hey, this didn't, and we need to do this to change it, and have that backup plan, or have the capacity to shift your thinking that way. So I love that. Great stuff. All right, we're at the point of the show, favorite part of the show. What's the one thing from today's conversation when we're talking about written versus video that people should take away from this?
That it's not I have to do one or another. It's I have to do both, and how do I do it efficiently?
Boom, mic drop. Lindsey, this has been great having you on the show. Great talking to you as always. Thanks for all your insights. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Alex.
All right. We'll talk again soon. And for everybody out there watching and listening, this is Endless Customers. I'm your host, Alex Winter. See you on the next one.